Context and the promise. Hello, truth seekers and lovers of great stories. Welcome back to Journey of the Soul. Today, we will delve into one of the most captivating and strategic narratives of the Old Testament, a story of palace intrigue, silent courage, and unwavering faith that changed the destiny of an entire nation. Prepare to meet Esther, the Jewish heroine who, from a position of vulnerability, ascended to the throne and became God's instrument for the salvation of her people. This is the story of how a young orphan became a queen and faced the purest evil, all for a divine purpose. The banquet of King Ahasuerus and the fall of Vashti. Our story begins in the vast Persian Empire, ruled by the powerful King Ahasuerus, who reigned over 127 provinces from India to Ethiopia. In the third year of his reign, Ahasuerus held a grand banquet in Susa, the capital, to display the wealth and glory of his kingdom. For 7 days, the feast was extravagant, with wine flowing freely and opulence in every detail. On the 7th day, with his heart merry from wine, King Ahasuerus ordered his 7 eunuchs to bring Queen Vashti into his presence, so that she might display her beauty to all the princes and the people. But Vashti, for reasons the Bible does not detail, refused to appear. Her refusal was a shock, a direct affront to royal authority. The king's advisors, fearing that Vashti's example would spread among the women of the empire, advised Ahasuerus to depose her and issue an irrevocable decree. Vashti was stripped of her title as queen, and a search for a new queen began. The arrival of Esther and the influence of Mordecai. Midst this search for a new queen, the figure of Hadassah emerges, a young Jewish orphan raised by her older cousin, Mordecai. Mordecai was a just and faithful man who worked at the king's Opifisam gate and had a deep love and care for Hadassah. He had adopted her as his daughter after the death of her parents. When the decree to gather all young virgins and beautiful women in Susa was issued, Hadassah, who was of beautiful form and good appearance, was taken to the palace. Mordecai, with wisdom and prudence, instructed her not to reveal her Jewish identity, as the Jewish people were a minority and lived in a foreign empire. Hadassah, obedient and discreet, followed her cousin's advice. In the harem, under the care of Hegai, the eunuch responsible for the women, Hadassah, who came to be called Esther, found favor. Her beauty, grace, and discreet conduct made her stand out among the many young women. Esther on the throne, a hidden purpose narrator. After a year of preparations and beauty treatments, it was Esther's turn to be presented to King Ahasuerus, and, as a touch of destiny, or rather divine providence, Esther found even more favor in the eyes of the king than all the other young women. Ahasuerus loved Esther more than all the women, and she won his grace and affection. He placed the royal crown on her head and proclaimed her queen in place of Vashti. A great banquet was given in Esther's honor, and the king granted a holiday to the provinces and distributed gifts. Esther, however, continued to keep her secret about her origin and her people, according to Mordecai's instruction. Meanwhile, Mordecai, faithful to the king and his people, continued to frequent the palace gate, keeping himself informed about events and, more importantly, looking after Esther from a distance. Haman's conspiracy. The beginning of the shadow. But peace in the empire was about to be broken by a sinister figure, Haman the Agagite, a man whom King Ahasuerus had exalted above all the princes. Haman demanded that everyone bow down and prostrate themselves before him. However, Mordecai, being a Jew, refused to do so, for the Jews only bowed before God. Mordecai's refusal enraged Haman, but Haman's wrath was not limited to Mordecai. He discovered that Mordecai was Jewish, and in his arrogance and hatred decided that it was not enough to punish only Mordecai. Haman planned to exterminate all the Jews living throughout the kingdom of Ahasuerus. He cast the pur, that is, the lot, to determine the day and month for the execution of his evil plan. The lot fell on the 12th month, the month of Adar. The decree of extermination and Mordecai's mourning narrator. With his plan in mind, Haman went to King Ahasuerus and, with cunning and deceptive words, convinced him to issue a decree to annihilate, kill, and destroy all the Jews, young and old, children and women, on a single day, and to plunder their goods. The king, unaware of Haman's true intention and the identity of the people to be exterminated, gave Haman his signet ring, granting him authority to seal the decree. Messengers were sent in haste to all the provinces of the empire, carrying the terrible news. When Mordecai learned of the decree, he tore his clothes, put on sackcloth and ashes, and went out into the city, crying out with a loud and bitter lament. Mourning and despair spread among the Jews in all the provinces, who fasted, wept, and lamented. It was a time of deep anguish and uncertainty. Mordecai's challenge to Esther. For such a time as this news of Mordecai's mourning reached Esther, who was greatly distressed. She sent clothes to him, but he refused. Then Esther sent Hathach, one of the king's eunuchs, to find out what was happening. Mordecai told Hathach everything that had happened, the exact sum of money Haman had promised to deposit into the king's treasuries for the destruction of the Jews, and gave him a copy of the decree to show to Esther. He also gave Hathach a clear command for Esther, that she should go to the king and plead for her people. Esther, aware of royal protocol, replied that anyone who approached the king without being summoned would be put to death, unless the king extended the golden scepter. She had not been called into the king's presence for 30 days. Mordecai's response was a turning point. Do not think that in the king's palace you alone of all the Jews will escape. For if you keep silent at this time, relief and deliverance will arise for the Jews from another place, but you and your father's house will perish. And who knows whether you have not come to the kingdom for such a time as this? Mordecai's words were a call to action, a reminder of the divine purpose behind Esther's ascent. Esther's fast and courage. If I perish, Esther. Understanding the gravity of the situation and the depth of the call, sent a reply to Mordecai. Go, gather all the Jews who are present in Susa and fast for me. Do not eat or drink for 3 days, night or day. I and my young women will also fast as you do. Then I will go to the king, though it is against the law. And if I perish, I perish. This declaration by Esther is one of the most powerful moments in history, demonstrating her courage and willingness to risk her own life for her people. She did not act on impulse, but with prayer and fasting, seeking divine direction and the unity of her people in a common purpose. Esther's faith was not passive. It was a faith that manifested itself in action, even in the face of imminent danger. Esther's banquets and the revelation. On the 3rd day of the fast, Esther put on her royal robes and went to the inner court of the palace, in front of the king's hall. The king, sitting on his throne, saw Queen Esther and extended the golden scepter to her, a sign of favor and permission to approach. Esther touched the tip of the scepter, and the king asked, "What do you wish, Queen Esther? What is your petition? Even up to half the kingdom will be given to you." Esther, with wisdom, did not reveal her request immediately. Instead, she invited the king and Haman to a banquet she had prepared. At the banquet, The king repeated his question, and Esther again postponed the revelation, inviting them to a second banquet the next day. This strategy of Esther increased the king's curiosity and Haman's arrogance, who was filled with pride at being the only guest with the king and queen. But the next night would bring an unexpected turn of events. The king's sleepless night and Mordecai's honor. That same night, the king could not sleep. He ordered that the book of the Chronicles, the records of the kingdom, be brought to him and read to him. And there it was read how Mordecai had exposed a conspiracy to assassinate King Ahasuerus. The king asked, "What honor and dignity has been conferred on Mordecai for this?" His servants replied that nothing had been done for him. At that very moment, Haman had arrived in the outer court of the palace to ask the king to hang Mordecai on the gallows he had prepared. The king then asked Haman, "What shall be done for the man whom the king desires to honor?" Haman, in his arrogance, thinking that the king wanted to honor him, described the greatest honor possible. The king then ordered Haman to do everything he had described for Mordecai. Haman, humiliated, had to lead Mordecai through the streets of the city, proclaiming his honor. Divine justice began to manifest itself. The final revelation and salvation narrator. At the second banquet, the king again asked Esther what her petition was. And then, with courage and eloquence, Esther revealed, "If I have found favor in your eyes, O king, and if it pleases the king, let my life be granted me, and the life of my people at my petition. For we have been sold, I and my Eopal, to be destroyed, to be killed, and to be annihilated." The king, shocked, asked, "Who is he, and where is he? Who would dare to do such a thing?" Esther replied, "The adversary and enemy is this wicked Haman." The king's wrath flared. Haman was hanged on the gallows he had prepared for Mordecai. The decree for the extermination of the Jews could not be revoked, but the king issued a new decree, allowing the Jews to defend themselves and take revenge on their enemies. Thus, the Jews were saved, and the day that would have been a day of mourning became a day of feasting and joy, Purim. The story of Esther is a testament to the power of divine providence, the courage of a woman, and the faith that can change the course of history. It reminds us that, even in the darkest moments, God is working behind the scenes, and that we are called to act with faith and courage to fulfill His purpose. May Esther's journey inspire your soul to never give up, to trust in God's plan, and to be an instrument of light in your own time.